Hey Algebra 2 kiddos, we're back today and we are going to sidestep away from some parabolas for a little bit, and we're going to look at lines just to kind of refresh your memory on equations of lines. And our goals or objectives for learning about lines is that we're going to remember the different types of equations of lines. And we're going to use each one to write an equation and to graph an equation. Okay, so those are our goals for today, and we're going to be looking at lines. So remember, when you think of linear equations, you may not think of this one first. But this is actually the standard form of a linear equation. And we say that this is ax, so this is ax plus by plus c, where c always stands for some sort of number, which we call a constant because it doesn't change. And then this letter A in front of the X is called the A coefficient, because a number in front of a variable is called a coefficient because it's being multiplied. B is also a coefficient. And a linear equation in standard form does help us find a couple things that we'll use later on, but this one in particular helps us find x and y intercepts pretty quickly. But this is just a reminder, this is standard form. Another type of linear equation, this one is probably the one that you like to use the most, is slope-intercept form. And anytime we hear that word form, we know when it's in this form, there is readily available information to us. We know that the second that we look at this form, we can see a particular type of information. Number one, because of the name, it's slope. We know that if we look at this form, the slope is ready to see. And we know that whatever number is in front of x is our slope. So m isn't really m. That stands for the number of our slope. And then what about the intercept? Well, remember, in this case, it's technically the y-intercept. And that's this value here. Now, it's not actually b. It's a value for b. So whatever number is in that place of b is the y-intercept. And if we were looking at this, okay, let's say here's our line. Actually, we'll make it hot pink. Okay, this value right here is the y-intercept. So this is the value for b. And the slope, the way we describe the slope is, remember, the steepness of a line, okay? Some people call it rise over run because we know it's the up and down value, or the change in the up and down value over the change in the x value. So we can call this x2 minus x1 all over y2 minus y1. So for example, if this was our first point, we can call this x1 comma y1. And this is our second point, we can call it x2 comma y2. And we plug in those values to find the slope. Okay, so remember, slope is the value for m. And then last but not least is another form of a linear equation. And this form is called the point slope form. And just like before, as I said, if something is in a specific form, there is a certain type of information that's readily available. And this information is listed here. So this tells us a point on the graph, which isn't necessarily an x or a y intercept, but it's a point. Now keep in mind that a point is always an x coordinate and a y coordinate. And because it's a point, we'll call this x1 for like a point. We say this is a value for x at point 1 and the value at y for point 1 as well. And then this slope is, again, this value for m. So here's the slope. We look for it here. Whatever's in front of that parentheses gives me the slope. And then the point, remember, is 2 values. So this x1 is really right here. So whatever value of x is there, we won't see an x. It'll be a number. Keep in mind, it's after the negative. So whatever value we see inside the parentheses, remember, you have to think of the opposite because it's a negative. And then for the y value of the point, y1 is right here. And again, it's after the minus. So whatever we see there, we're going to take the opposite. And that is point slope form.